Welcome to Setting the Bar, where we sit down for a virtual drink with best-in-class operational leaders. Today's episode is all about the future of accounts payable. What are the biggest challenges that AP leaders are facing in today's world? How are they tackling them? And what does good truly look like? Please welcome my guest today, Leith, who is the Managing Director of the Procure-to-Pay Network, commonly known as PPN. Cheers, Ellen. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.
Lovely mug. I'm really enjoying that. So I think we can go ahead and launch into our first question, which is, if you could only measure one KPI in accounts payable, which would it be?
Well, that's a really difficult question because there are so many really good KPIs which organizations really need to take account of. And so just narrowing it down to only one is quite difficult to do. But I think if you're looking at a transformation program, or you've been through any kind of transformation, for me, I think it's really important to see how many of your suppliers have actually taken part in your, say, for example, an e-invoicing project. So look at your e-invoices versus your manual process invoices is a really key KPI for me, and it's one which not everybody actually measures or necessarily knows about, because you may well have implemented a solution, but is everybody taking part of it in it? How many of your invoices are actually coming through in the way that you want them to? And if they're not, maybe you want to find out, well, why not? You know, have you not gone through some of those changes as you might want to? You know, so for me, that's a key. Whether it's the number one, I don't know, but for me, it's certainly one of the key measurements that people quite often miss out on.
Yeah, and I think you actually are the first one on the program to have measured this particular KPI and to talk to the kind of focus that's needed on it. I think it's also really interesting because from my own experience in these implementations of e-procurement suites, it's something that if you are measuring it all, you might well measure in the first few weeks of the implementation. Perhaps if you're lucky in the first few months, but then as time goes on, it ceases to be something that really gets the attention that it deserves. But there's typically enormous opportunity that's present there that's being left on the table.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're going to get the ROI that you expected, or some of those outcomes that you expected in terms of efficiency, transparency, and that whole end-to-end transformation piece that you so need and want and thought that you were buying into, if people aren't taking part in that, then you're just not going to achieve it.
So let me then ask, what are some of the challenges that you see organizations facing in measuring and actually achieving good performance for that KPI?
Well, I think that a lot of the issues surround the management piece and actually having buy-in from the right kind of key stakeholders within the business as well. Do you actually have the person who is going to be at the coalface actually working with the solution involved from the very first step of the implementation piece, or even beforehand? You know, have you done your homework before that's taken place? You know, have you spoken to the rest of the business and the other areas of the business and looked at your processes beforehand? So I think that's one of the main challenges, is that people think that if they buy into a solution, that's the be all and end all. That's going to magically address all of their problems. Everything's going to be done just like that, because it's automation, right? You know, you just whack in this piece of automation, put in this technology, and therefore it will solve all of your problems. And of course, you and I both know that that isn't the case. You know, you need to look at what your processes are beforehand and see whether anything there needs to change. So I think that certainly is one of the issues. And of course, you know, you've got to not forget that there are people involved in this as well, and so that's also one of the barriers. And you need to look at what you as a business need for your outcomes. What is it that you're trying to achieve? And I think with any kind of process, you need to ask yourself why. And I think that goes alongside any KPI that you're looking at. Before you measure it and tick box and say, yes, I've measured that KPI, you've got to think, well, does that still resonate with the business today?
I think the final question from my side is, what is your biggest actionable takeaway for the AP and finance leaders that are watching?
Well, I think that they really need to have a good look, particularly in these times, particularly have a good look at their team. A lot of the transformation obviously is about technology and how to implement that and making sure you've got the right technology, and you can't make a transformation without it. That's a given. But also you can't make a really good and long-term investment into your business without looking at your people, without looking at your staff and making sure that they're on track. That are they on track in terms of knowing what they're supposed to be doing? Do they know what your business strategy is and where they fit into that? If you can build that culture of trust and individual responsibility and where that fits within the organization for each person, for each team member, then you're going to actually encourage the business outcomes that you want. And people, yourself, or anybody, you need to feel like you are responsible for yourself and that you are trusted to align what you're doing with the business strategy. So for me, it's making sure that you've got the culture and the people, retaining talent, keeping the talent, and making sure that your corporate social responsibility is there within your team and there within your business, wider business as well. So for me, that's what I think is really important right now.
Fantastic. I think that, especially in a remote first world, which is the direction we're headed right now, the importance of culture and habit and taking the right steps from the broader business perspective can be stated. So thank you so much, Ellen. It was such a pleasure having you on today. And thank you all so much for watching today's episode of Setting the Bar. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.